the term digital transformation may be misleading, mainly because of the word digital. So digital for many people imply that we're just going to be deploying some kind of technology into the space, and then all the work is done. But digital transformation really seeks to create or modify business processes, culture, and the customer experiences, all with a hope to meet the constantly changing requirements of both the market and the business. We really have to make special emphasis of the importance of cultural change. If we get ahead and steer the culture, steer the conversation in the manner that we want, then we have seen, truthfully, that these projects are a lot more successful. We have to be able to ingrain constant experimentation and failing quickly to be able to, build out these great projects.
Correct. It's less and less these days about the technology and more about our organization, our structure, people, and how we're setting up ourselves. So
correct. So with these projects, there are some great value propositions, Ali, some great value propositions. And one of the ones that we're going to be sharing with you guys today is, technological advancement. And if we could just think back to a few years ago, when we were thinking about buying our own digital cameras in the space of Kodak. Everyone wants to make sure that you have the latest digital camera, the zoom is okay, it's small, can fit into my pocket. But in these times, a lot of persons have invested in having phones with great cameras to be able to, be mobile, to store more. So even the problems that you face when we're thinking about a regular camera has now morphed into something else. We're now thinking about how do we have adequate storage for all the pictures that we want to take. Right.
That's funny, B, because I was one of those people, even with an IT background, I can recall myself saying so confidently, like, why would I not have a digital camera? I just like my devices separate, they're like fit for purpose. Yeah. You have your camera and then I have my phone. And I've lived to see the day where I'm thinking, why did I ever have a digital camera?
Exactly.
Or there's no need for it now, But those who are photographers and in the space, there's a definite need for that level of photography. But it's just how things have changed and how we need to be ready for that change, which leads us into the next big value proposition and the catalyst for why a lot of organizations are pivoting is for the customer experience. As customers are consuming, the commercial vendoring that's available to them becomes more apparent and they have more choices. They're looking for a particular experience when they're buying our products and services. And if they're not having a very good experience with our companies, then they're going to shift. And with that shift, you lose your revenue growth. So a lot of companies are trying to make the customer experience better, a lot of times to drive their bottom line. So that's usually one of the big value propositions or a big reason for why companies would embark on a digital transformation journey.
Yeah, very true, Ali. And even with thinking about revenue growth, one of those big things is operational efficiency, which is usually some kind of measure of efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency being, how well we are using our resources, and effectiveness being how we are doing the very best that we can the first time, we churn out this product or service. These measures tend to really tell us or give us an idea of how well we are meeting our demands, the requirements of the business, or even the requirements of the customers. And if monitored carefully, it can really, show us the need to want to do these things faster, to make sure that they're of higher quality at the best cost possible to the business.
And if you think about it in the simplest term, there are two ways to be more profitable. You're either going to grow your revenues or you're going to manage your costs down. And as our environment becomes a lot more dynamic, a lot of companies are struggling for share of wallet, and the market becomes that more competitive. What you find is that the winners are usually able to better optimize their costs. And I think we did a webinar not too long ago around cost reduction versus cost optimization. And when you can drive your efficiencies to optimize every dollar spent is really where the big value is. And you know, the three you spoke about before, Brandon, the technology advancement is probably something that comes ready to mind, especially for young persons. The customer, the revenue growth, the efficiency, those are big things. But another dimension that a lot of companies are paying attention to is the ability that they have to not just attract, but to retain the right client, the right, skill set within the organization. And that a lot of that has to do with how can you take care of your employees or your team members, keep them highly motivated, so they can drive the initiatives that you want to do. And we're seeing where analytics is also playing a role in that space as well. And then a wider concept, digital transformation, a lot of time hinges on your team, your human resources, and how they're going to drive that transformation effort.
Very true, Ali. I fully agree. Our employees are not just, you know, something else on the table that you're trying to optimize, but they are a key part of why digital transformation makes sense, And though there are some great value propositions and some great benefits that we can have from digital transformation, the statistics behind it is not necessarily speaking, you know, are very motivating sometimes. It can be very daunting to see. So even looking at McKinsey here, they stated that 16% of executives say their company's digital transformation efforts are succeeding.
Which means that 84% consider their transformation efforts to be failing, you know?
Right. And I mean, I don't know if 16% is a very, very small number, but they are doing a lot more. And 72% of strategists say that their company's digital efforts are missing the revenue expectations as stated by Gartner.
But you know what? Yeah, go ahead, B.
No, I'm just saying that it depending on how you have the conversation or how you do these projects, these numbers can become real to us, very, very real to us.
Yeah, and one of the things is that digital transformation, a lot of instances, is not a cheap initiative. Just from the support that you need, the consulting resources that you need, the disruption that a lot of times happens within an organization, and the technology changes all come at a cost. But when B shared the third statistics on the screen, I found it like really insightful. So given the pandemic, a lot of companies have been cutting costs. Going back to we're trying to maximize every dollar given these uncertainties. 52% of companies plan to cut or defer investment because of the pandemic. What was interesting is that just 9% of those cuts will be made in digital transformation. So there is still a very, very strong belief and confidence that for most organizations to go to their next chapter, for some of them just to remain viable, they must embark on a digital transformation journey. So even though the previous statistics don't paint a very good picture of the likelihood of success, a lot of us are still staying in the game, because if you think about it, what are the options, right? So we must embark on it. So we must get it right. The statistics are not very favorable now because a lot of us are still learning, but sessions like these allow us to share ideas and thoughts. So since we all have to do it, let's learn from each other and let's see how best to do it.
Right, and even with, you know, the last thing here shared by Forrester, where a lot of companies in really trying to do digital transformation the best way they can, instead of actually transforming the business model or the business processes, the customer experience, the culture, we try to modernize that existing space, you know, putting in some automation tools, we put in some OCR technology, some character recognition things, able to scan documents, upload it to our shared space, and, you know, we feel very happy. But one of the things too, if we take a chapter out of the Lean book, when you're talking about the cost of quality, and you list out even the cost of poor quality, the things that are below the iceberg, the things that you don't see so readily, you realize that a lot of our costs, a lot of our errors, a lot of our issues are those things that are a little below the surface, like having an excess inventory that will not run down. You know, those small things really add up. And so after we put in these types of technology, it really amplifies the problem that you have. It now becomes one of the greatest things that you had before.
You make such a good point there, B, about technology just sometimes amplifying the problems that you have, which is in just our experience and looking at clients, we've seen that where you throw technology at a problem and it just makes the problem more visible. It's kind of like money. If you're a bad spender, the more money you have, it doesn't make you more wealthy. You just owe more because you haven't learned the discipline of how to manage your money.
Correct.
A similar thing with business. If we never stop to reimagine what it is that we need to morph into for our next chapter, we are going to throw technology, which is becoming more available and cheaper, at a problem. And what technology does is to make things quick and more visible. So I think that's a good point you raised there, B. And then the question is then, how do we get digital transformation right? And the little diagram here I thought was very helpful in terms of just quickly explaining what we need to bear in mind. So we know that there's usually some kind of definition, some kind of objective that we want to meet, some kind of problem definition, some kind of value proposition. We model our processes, we tweak our processes to see how best do we get to that outcome. And then we go through our implementation process. So far, very typical of how we normally do our business, or we normally do any kind of change, right? The big part of a transformation initiative, though, in my opinion, is that purple space on the screen that you see with evaluation. When we've done our implementation, critically is our ability to learn. Our ability to see how well what we're pushing out is giving us the outcomes that we want, and then to take that learning to continuously improve and push it back into our innovation cycle. I think there's this huge fear of failing, that one, we monitor what's going to look good. Or two, we don't even build the capabilities to monitor the environment. So we check off and we call the project a success once we have built it and deployed it, and we burst the champagne, everybody is tired, exhausted, and happy. But we don't realize that, especially in an environment that keeps changing so quickly, we need to learn and be able to be in a position to know when our market change, when our customers' perceptions have changed, when the things that our assumptions are no longer the same. Quickly pull that information in and feed it back into our innovation cycle so we can tweak our processes, tweak our products, tweak, and this applies to, as different persons join this conversation, this applies to any business that you're in. Whether you are a dressmaker or you're running a multi-billion organization, the process and the principles are the same. Monitor. So as you find these fantastic ideas, be very clear. And I think, B, you had some further in the discussion around how to look at what makes a metric good. Don't just focus on building the product, but be very clear on how do I know that what I'm going to push the market is getting me to where I want to be, the outcomes that I want, and be able to pull that information and learn over time. And a keyword that Brandon likes and I like is pivot. Be willing to get the information and course correct quickly.
Correct.
And I know you did a lot of work, Brandon, on two companies. We won't call names, but I think it's a good body of work to talk about, even just from a perspective of lessons learned, things that worked, things that did not, and kind of take us through your work.
So we, there's a very large company, and unfortunately we're not able to share the name of the company, but we can learn a few things from them. So this company is a very large business, very large company, and they wanted to remove the small silo, the ITs across the organization to create this one large IT enterprise.
Sounds like as well as idea.
It sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I think so.
As well as they wanted to, take over the digital space. They had this grand idea that they were going to be the best at the game, the best in the business. And so they, got the buy-in from the business, and they got a lot of investment, and they went to really go after this beast. But one of the things that, we learned from them is that they tried to do every single thing at the same time, or all at once. They tried to change the entire company all at once. And if you think about a very large company, any large company you can think about, even in Jamaica, if you're going to try to change one of those very large companies, it is almost as though we're steering a big ship with a very small wheel. It becomes extremely difficult to be able to maneuver those things that will come before you. And then you can, because of how this was and how they did it, they really didn't show what it is that they wanted to achieve. They probably had these thoughts in their minds about, how we want to get there, but there was no shared vision or shared understanding about what exactly are we trying to do? What does success look like for us? And then they also showed that when they were trying to build out these new processes within their company, the business was not yet capable, as both the current process as well as the resources, the human resources that they had, weren't capable to manage these new business needs, these new business requirements. And so very quickly, they were able to fail in a sense. They weren't able to pivot, from all the things that they had done, all the investments that they had put into the system. And, when you have not defined what success look like, and when you're trying to bite the entire pie, really, the options are very few. You could either swallow or you could choke. You may have to do something else to, get it to work. And then you have the absence of quantifiable metrics. Really, what does success look like? Where are we now? These are some of the things that they really didn't spend some time to even benchmark, to be able to, go further and say, okay, make a commitment to our executive leaders, to our business, to our shareholders, that this is where we're going, this is how long it's gonna take us to get there, and this is what we plan to achieve. And this is how we're gonna know that we've actually achieved it. Right.
Yeah, and you raise a good point there about, especially in large organizations, and lightning, it's a big ship. And a lot of us, if you're not very deliberate on saying what the outcomes are, each team leaves with a perception of what we're trying to do. And they're doing all the textbook things in terms of coming with a vision and getting their team motivated. But there is no congruence, there is no coming together of all of those things to meet the big strategic imperatives. So we're all hitting different targets, but the hitting of those targets isn't moving this big ship in the direction as fast as we want to go. So, I think it was a really good case study there. And you raise a point around what makes a metric good. You said one of the failings here was that they didn't have the proper quantifiable metrics. And from my experience, I found this very funny. In my earlier days, I've learned in choosing the right metrics, ensure that it is relevant. And sometimes when you're too close to the execution, you can get caught up in the effort and being able to reflect the amount of effort the team is doing to meet the objective. So a good example is, let's take a sales process. Most of us can relate to a sales cycle. If the objective is profit, then a good thing to try and measure is the extent to which you're growing sales, or the extent to which you're being able to enable the sale, right?
Right.
Also great is to track the margins on each product you're selling, so you know the extent to which you're gonna enable profit, if profit is the goal.
Right.
Bad one to use is like, what's the size of my sales team? If you cannot draw a strong correlation between the number of people you have selling your goods and services and the amount of goods and services you're able to push out of the sales pipeline, then be very careful about the metric that you're choosing. Be very, very hard on yourself and very clear on what is it that I'm going after and what gives me the greatest assurance that I'm going to hit it. So going back to my sales example, if profit is objective, you want to be monitoring things like sales. You know that your margins can erode profit. So you want to also look at what are the margins. Is growing my revenue also growing my cost at a faster rate than my revenue is growing, and therefore eroding my margins and my ability to make profit.
Right.
So being very clear on that.
And then looking also at reliable metrics, those metrics that for us really say that it can be managed over time. We can actually measure it over time. We're able to see how it progresses, how there are any observable trends and so on. And a good example of this could be having a good data quality score. Where you're making sure that the bottom line, the denominator is current, is constant, the same for constant. Right. Thank you, for the entire time that you're doing the work. And of course, a bad example of this is always changing that denominator, always changing that factor to make sure that we have a good number. But what you realize if we do, if our metrics are unreliable, is that we're not able to tell where we are now, or where we were, where we are now, and how to get there. It becomes extremely difficult for us to do that.
Yeah. And you can't measure the lifts. Remember, if once you're in a transformation stage, you have to be open to learning. So although it was the most fancy idea and your ego is all wrapped up into it, have a little cry and then come back to the table and say it did not work. I thought it would have worked, but I'm not getting the lift. I thought that hiring this brilliant person to do my sales campaigns would have given me my 20% lift. But look back at the number. But if you keep changing, I think you made the point of data quality. If you keep changing how you measure data quality or how you come up with your data quality score, you'll never be able to say all the initiatives that we've done to improve quality is actually giving us this lift. I think, and that's a really good point. Measurable. I want my staff to be happy. Find me a way to objectively measure that, and that's important. I'm not saying it's a bad metric. I think it's a very important metric. Happy people, everybody wants that great work experience, but ensure that the metric you're choosing is measurable, objectively measurable, and you have removed a lot of the subjectivity from it.
Right. And then we talk about actionable, which is possibly one of my favorite characteristics of a good metric, Ali. You gave, in our stand-ups every day, you really want to drill with us, or you really do try to drill with us that, for example, follow-ups is not a good actionable metric. Always saying to us, guys, what's the outcome of the follow-up? What really are we trying to do? What action can I take from this follow-up? Is just checking off that I did a follow-up good enough for an activity or a metric that I did? No, we have to make sure that the metric gives us some kind of insight. It helps us to be able to make some positive changes to our company. So probably a better one would be number of visitors we've had on our site, or the number of percent of persons that have clicked buy or learned more on a certain campaign that we're doing, or visiting our site trying to get something done. We have to make sure that these metrics, or the metric that we choose, gives us the ability to garner insight. Right.
But even like the example you raised, like how many people actually click on learn more? And if a lot of people are not clicking on that, and you give it within the context of some kind of call to action. Right. If you have a lot of people visiting, but they're not clicking on more, then it's either that what you've presented is good enough, or what you've presented is not enticing enough, so I'm not continuing. And a lot of times it's that what you're presenting is not necessarily good enough, but it's either something I don't want, or you didn't present it in a way that I wanted to opt in. So when you look at the numbers so you got a lot of people in, but a lot of people didn't continue the process, what's driving that gap? And you can actually manage. So now you have an actionable metric. You can manage that gap down to what's going to give whatever your outcome is. And I think the last one you have up beyond readable is probably one of my funniest stories around choosing a metric. And sometimes you get so caught up in what you're doing, you really love it. You're trying to, get it down to a science in terms of the numbers. And then you're asked to explain it at an executive level. And if it's going to take you more than 3 minutes to explain your metric, and it's going to require a statistics degree for somebody to understand and use it, you have the wrong metric. So it has to be readable. It has to be easy to be understood, and it has to be ideally not easily misunderstood. And a simple one that I think we sometimes have an issue with, and it's not about probably using too much formula or technical jargon to compute it, but more around just misunderstanding what is it you're measuring. A lot of companies want to be able to contact their customers. There are two things. I can either have your contact, or was I able to reach you? Now, if I have your contact and I have a good contact, that's a quality thing. Was I able to reach you, and did you respond? Is a customer responsive thing. So how you present that metric is important, that you don't give the perception of having a data quality problem when the problem you have is your customers are not responding. So you are getting Brandon. Brandon does not want to speak to you. Though if you're still trying to solve a data quality issue, you're going on the wrong road. You're trying to solve a responsiveness issue. So ensuring things are readable, easy to understand, I think is important.
Very true, Ali. And going off into, we've spent a lot of time talking about those things that probably didn't work. Yeah. But there's another large company that they realized that the industry, the market was changing. And instead of quivering to their knees and waving the white flag, they decided to get up and see how best they can change their business model, transform their business model to better fit the now requirements. And one of the things that that company did was that they managed the change proactively, the change for their employees, for their leaders, for the customers that they'll have, the entire business. They decided to get ahead of it and walk people through. Managing the change also has a lot to do with training and upskilling and sensitization and making everyone aware of what these changes may be. There are several change models that are present in the space. One of the most recent ones that has surfaced would be the ADKAR model that speaks a lot about awareness, desire, and knowledge. And then we have the piece that says ability, which is after you've told them that these are the things that they now need to do, they probably even gotten a manual to read to get these new things done. And you deploy this new kind of technology with these new features. But am I able to do anything with it? Do I know what I'm going to be doing? Before even getting to reinforcing that new learning, we have to spend some time to get everyone and everything onboarded. And we can talk about even upgrading, how they upgraded their existing processes, their existing procedures to fit this new digital requirement that they had in front of them, implementing new kinds of technologies to make sure that they're able to stand the test of time. One of the good things about digital transformation, Ali, which we mentioned earlier, is it's not about being stagnant. It's not about remaining the same. A good digital transformation project is one that is able to shift and change when things happen. You're being agile, you're pivoting when the time comes. And so they were able, when they were doing their digital transformation, they were able to upgrade their policies, their procedures, to match the new requirement. And they spent a lot of time upskilling their workforce, upskilling the people that are now going to be doing these new things. So we have to really, 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 we can find some examples. If, for example, let us say that you have an app on your phone that you've been using for some time. And the app gives you everything that you need at that point in time. You're comfortable, there's nothing, but the app developer feels as though they need to do an upgrade, probably a bug fix or whatever it is, but they added a new feature. They haven't told you what this feature is. You don't know how it works. You don't know what it's going to do for you. You have no context about what is going to happen. And so upskilling your workforce, and in this case, also your customers, to be able to manage these new features that they're going to have to go through.
And a big part too, and you have it in bold there, is understanding your value chain and your customer journey. The value chain is internal,
Right.
understanding all the components that need to be present to deliver the product or service or whatever is of value. And of course, not missing out what we call our supporting infrastructure, which
Right.
a lots of times come back to eat out your efficiency and your cost optimization initiatives because we don't pay attention to them sometimes. But to understand their importance and to understand the direct cost and how everybody plays a role. So a value chain allows you to see that full production line and give you the opportunity to make a decision around the worthiness of each component. And therefore, depending on their worthiness, you're either going to keep them as part of the process, or you're going to optimize, upskill them to get more out of their participation in the process. So this is very important in terms of understanding your value chain for delivery of value. And I think the second thing you had, B, was around understanding your customer journey. So one is internal to the organization. The second part is the customers. And if your business does not rely on customers to be successful, then right, this probably doesn't apply. But once you depend on customers to be in business, then understanding how you provide those products and services internally is critical. And then understanding what your customer experience is like is fundamental to ensuring that you cannot just attract, but you can retain customers and improve and drive your business.
Yeah.
And the customer journey really is just a map of the customer's complete experience. And I think, Brandon, you had a really nice chart there in terms of just a typical customer journey. And it's pulled from the internet, but it was an easy way to show something that's already in the public domain. So we're not taking credit for it, but something that's already in the public domain without having to sanitize anything internally. And it really does shows how a customer's experience changes at the different points of the process. And what this allows us to do is at the points where they're not happy, it's a good indication of our pain points. And when you solve your pain points, you're going to improve your customer experience and the likelihood that they'll continue to do business with you or continue to be loyal customers. And I think a lot of us know the correlation between customer loyalty and the ability to drive our bottom line.
Yeah. The customer journey map is a very, I was going to say cool. It's a very, very, very nice tool.
I like cool to be.
It's a very cool tool that really helps us to identify all our opportunities for improvement. Not all, but I guess as many as we can, based on how the customers have been interacting with the process. Whether it is a face-to-face kind of process, walking into a bank, walking into a retail store, or doing something online. How are they able to access the various screens that we put up? How are they feeling in the moment? Are they confused? Are they distracted? Are there too many colors on the screen? It really does show that, or does give us an idea about how we can better that experience and thereby improving our revenue. Yeah.
Awesome. And it kind of dovetails into this, and we can all relate to probably a couple of years ago when everything, once you had to interact with a company, you're talking to a human customer service rep. And without calling names of popular companies, that was an experience that we all will remember. But then we moved away. It was a huge pain point for customers. We hated having to call any particular companies because it just took us so long. You had to explain your story multiple times to different people. So we came up with the chatbot. So what this allows us to do now is handle those requests that are simple. You can respond to it easily. And as more and more as we integrate AI with these bots, the bots are becoming more intelligent to handle even more complex queries. And what we've found from statistics is that the experience or the expectation of experience is now evening out. A couple of years ago, people hated to talk to machines. That just put me onto a human being. And now people are getting accustomed to it. There's some companies where that is going to be your first point of contact. but because it enables the process so much, I don't have to keep explaining myself. People are opting now to use the technology. So chatbots, good example of a way that persons are innovating to solve pain points. And you find that companies who do it well are companies who are able to maintain or retain their customers. Right. Another big thing is decision making. You send in your application and someone is poring over all of this data that you have provided to come up with a decision. No, right. Not all decisions need all of our intellectual capacities as human beings. Some of those can be automated. We can ask right. machines to learn, look at our portfolio over time and help us to make better decisions. Leave right. the things that can be automated to those facilities and allow your human beings to do more value-adding work, I think is a thing. And I think another big piece that I wanted to touch on when I got this opportunity to speak with you, B, is the importance of ensuring that as we improve the different pain points of the customer journey, don't forget the reg tech or what we call the compliance part of the business. Because what has been happening is we're able to push through the transactions, but when it comes to compliance verification and sign off, then we have a bottleneck because we haven't transformed that part of the business as well.
Right.
So it's very important that not just the front end, for example, the chatbot, not just your processing in terms of decision making, doing it faster, but the compliance piece of it that can be a bottleneck is also part of the big picture that we need to consider. And as someone always says, for every digital transformation journey, you're gonna find that the customer is going to be central to that exercise. And I think we had a couple of things that even from doing your process re-engineering exercises, you've found important in dealing and looking at the customer perspective.
Right, Ali. I mean, in my own experience, and I've sadly, I've done this too, where instead of actually asking the customer, finding a way to collect that feedback from the customer, I assumed that they wanted something. I assume that this must be in the process to meet their demands. I assume, and not that assumptions are bad. Assumptions have their place. And you know, a lot of times when customers say anything, you have to, you know, make sure that you understand exactly what they're saying, which we'll get into after. But here now, we spend a lot of time. For example, let us say that a customer, you know, you want, for example, to give the customer a red phone, and the customer may want a black phone or a white phone. They may not want the black or a white phone. They may probably just like the shape of the phone. They probably like how the screen is flat. But we assume that this is what they
always
want.
buy the red phone.
Correct.
That is the red phone they want.
It's the red phone they want, and it's possibly just the color that is pulling them to them. So thereafter, we start to make sure that all the phones that we turn out are red. Yeah, but we have no idea, or we haven't had any definitive, no data to support
why
that, you know, why the customer actually wants this red phone. Is it really the color? And then after collecting the customer's information, after going down to the space to really ask them or to collect it, we have to be able to anticipate and interpret what those mean. So even in the lean methodology, they have this tool or method called the voice of the customer, where it pretty much tries to help you to decipher the things that they may say that they want. So a lot of times, you know, customers have, you know, they have a red phone, they have a Nokia, they have a, if we remember 3310 or any of those things, who would have thought who would have thought that customers would have wanted a phone with no buttons on it?
Correct.
And possibly those many years ago, if we had asked the makers of those phones, asked the maker of Nokia, of, you know, those people, or asked them to ask their customers, maybe, just maybe, the customers would not have said they wanted a phone without buttons. Or they wanted a phone to have a camera, because we had cameras, we had digital cameras. So a lot of times when we ask our customers what it is that they want, we have to spend some time to interpret those customer needs, right? And be able to see down the line. Customers can suffer from what we call the cataract effect. And employees do it too, or, you know, us in the business, where we're only able to see what is in front of us. We are down in it so much that we can't see any wider. And then we have to also make sure that we are not just selling them the goods or the products or the services and calling it a day. We've made our money and we no longer care. We have to, because we're trying to realize the benefits of our digital transformation and we're becoming customer centric. We have to stay with them on the journey.
Yeah,
and the journey does not end after sale.
The sale.
At the point of sale, the journey continues, because studies would have shown that the customer retention is actually 1/5 of the acquisition cost. So to retain that customer and having them as a repeat customer will actually push up our revenue. It increases our profit, for that matter. It increases our margin. So it puts us in a better position to be able to
be cost efficient.
Correct, Ali. Correct.
Yeah. This is really a great conversation. Where we're just about at the end, and we're quickly going to go through the tips, because I wanted to be able to answer any questions that we may have from the audience. But 5 quick things, if you can remember, from all our conversation, and we can talk about this for the whole day. You'll realize it's something that we really, really love and we enjoy doing. But one, reimagine your business, not just the technology. Be very, very clear on where you want to be as a business. Just like some of us who got married, your wedding planner would say, just imagine what you want. If you had no constraints, create that. And then she hand you the budget and then you cut. But importantly, create what you want first, right? Yeah. Reimagine where you want to be as a whole. Remember that thing about the chatbot, the automated decisioning, and your RegTech. Think of the company as a whole. Reimagine where you want to be. And then let that be your starting point for your business case on why you're gonna embark on the journey.
Correct, Ali. As well, and one of the other things that we must do is really spend the time to understand our customers' needs and put their needs first. As at the end of the day, we more customers, for those of us who have a customer-centric business, more customers means more revenue. The more we have them coming and taking products and services from us, it will actually benefit us. We have to spend that time to learn their methods, learn their behavior. Even if we want to, doing our digital transformation, putting in the cool things like, clustering analysis and all the nice words that we want to throw out there, and making sure that we understand what this segment of customer, what they're doing. And
behavior.
Correct. We have to make sure that we're understanding all our customers' needs.
And I think you made a good point the other day, Brandon. I think I was saying the only people who don't have customers is government with taxes. And you're like, no, they need us. And you can even see with our tax reform, the importance of putting customers first, actually collect more and just making it easier for us to pay our taxes. And we spent a bit of time on number 3 in terms of the metrics. So I won't go over it here, but ensure you measure for what you want, not effort. Measure for what you want.
And not the effort. And then when we're talking about seeking to build or to continuously learn, we have to make sure, Ali, that we are setting up our systems to be able to change. We're setting up our systems to be able to write. And we're not trying to get everything done at once.
Nope. You have to be able to scale.
Correct. We're making sure that we secure those, what we call in the business space, these quick wins, are these large value, small effort projects. We get those in first and secure a win for the company. And those projects will really be the selling point as to why digital transformation will be worth it. We have to look at the entire company, and yes, there are ways and techniques, of course, to really look at all of the opportunities that you have and scale them to make sure that you're picking up those big value, low cost, low effort ones to get those wins. It has to be one of those things that we focus on if we want to really realize our benefits.
And I think in one of the keys in one of the companies that you spoke about, and one of the lessons learned, is not having the capability to do the job. Build capabilities, and it's even easier to get the resourcing and the skill sets that you need. Not necessarily easy to find it, but easier in terms of being able to co-op these skills with a lot of the remote work that's happening now. We're not limited to your jurisdiction. You can get skills from anywhere in the world, but build capabilities, both from the team perspective. If you need consultants, if you need particular skills, lots of people out there are very focused on developing competence in those areas. Rope them in and allow your team to be able to scale. And importantly, don't just build for the bottom line for today, but think about the future and how you're going to sustain that bottom line or that level of growth. And a lot of times doing super normal growth, a lot of it has to be do with building capability and capacities. And with that said, I think we're just at the point for questions.